episode of Quarantine Coaches. I am really excited. We have the pitching coach at MIT, Coach Todd Carroll. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having us, Josh. Excited to talk about our program and certainly excited to talk about something other than a coronavirus. So
yeah, no doubt. Massachusetts Institute of Technology is the first Division III program that we have on the show, and I'm super excited to talk about it because it's the #1 engineering school in the world, and you guys are also putting out guys that are getting drafted to the pros. So first of all, can you just tell me a little bit about where the school is and what are the kids studying there?
all right. MIT it's a sprawling campus along the Charles River, right across the river from downtown Boston. We got about 4,500 undergrads studying mostly math and science. There are some other pursuits, but our kids tend to just be really, really good at math and science and the disciplines that veer off from there. So engineering is obviously a big one, computer science, a lot of econ majors that go to Wall Street, and a lot of business analytics has become a big one lately too. So a lot of number crunchers, they tend to be the best number crunchers around.
And what are the kids doing when they graduate with a degree from there? What fields are they going into generally?
This sounds a little bit arrogant, but they do whatever they want.
That's not arrogant. That's a great thing.
Whether they want to go work for NASA, whether they want to go, work on Wall Street, whether they want to go. We have 6 or 7 alums in MLB front offices right now working on the analytics side. So the freedom that comes with an education that's that strong is having choices in your professional life and not being boxed into one area because you're so well-rounded as a student. And because you're really elite in your fields, you can do whatever you want. And so there's really no common thing like, our alums aren't hiring each other necessarily because they all want to go on different paths. And being at the forefront of technology, that changes every 4 or 5 years. So the jobs that our kids are taking out of the class of 2020 are very different from the class of 2015. And I would imagine the class of 2025 is going to be different from this class too.
So what are the requirements grade-wise to get into the school?
When we start recruiting, we generally looking at 34 ACTs and up. We're looking for kids that are at the top of the class or near the top of the class. We're looking, a big phrase with us is maximizing their curriculum. So we want student athletes that are going to their counselors and saying, hey, I want to take the best classes we have and I want to excel in them. And that tends to have the background that allows them to be successful at a place like MIT.
Does it make it difficult? You're the pitching coach and the recruiting coordinator. How difficult is it on the recruiting trail when you are looking for such a high academic athlete who can get it done on the field as well? And then Division IIIs don't offer any baseball scholarships, so the cost of the tuition is not cheap as well. I mean, does that make your job difficult?
Well, there are 2 vastly different questions. So as far as not having scholarships, it's a really easy sell. If you're going to take a second mortgage to pay for college, there's a lot of colleges out there that it's 70 grand and you don't know what you're getting back. And at MIT, you pay our tuition, you know what you're getting back. I know what the starting salaries are of our kids coming out of college. I know that money, those loans are going to be able to be paid off. It's a generational shift for families as far as what they can afford after they come out of there. So when you're selling that aspect of it, you don't feel like a used car salesman because it has real value. So telling a kid, hey, you may have to take some loans out to get through MIT. Well, of course you do that because you're sitting on a winning lottery ticket. You just need to scratch it. And then as far as the recruiting aspect of it, we have to travel the country. We're on the road a lot in the summer. I think we had 21 states on our roster this year. So we encompass a large area. And there's a lot of work on the front end, but once those kids get into MIT, they're not going to turn it down. So we're able to find some high-end guys that maybe had Division I options, but they don't want to sacrifice on either side. They want a world-class education here, and they want a tremendous baseball experience here. We think we can provide both.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you touched on that because I talk about that a lot with recruits, is understanding the value, of what you're getting. And yeah, that's a great point there. And I'm sure there's plenty of very talented kids out there on the ball field that would love to get a degree from MIT as well. It's got to be tough for your guys to balance the rigorous academics there and the athletics. How do you help them do that?
It is. We're fortunate that we're one of 33 varsity sports at MIT. So we're the biggest Division III athletic department in the country. I think there's a great support system amongst the different teams. You know, the athletes from different teams helping each other. There's some camaraderie there where, you know, that's about one of every 5.5 students is a student athlete. So there's somebody else going through the same thing on your floor. It certainly is challenging, and we try to do that. We were just finishing up the 2021 schedule, and that's every time we schedule, we try to take academics into account. How can we spread it out more? Obviously, with the weather, it's a challenge. You know, you can't start playing games here on February 1st. So, you know, we have to try to take some trips to get some weather. And how do we miss the least amount of class time possible is a challenge. But also, we're one of 38 colleges and universities within 7 miles of where I'm sitting right now. And that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So when we travel midweek, you know, if we go to Tufts, it's 4 miles up the road. You know, if we go to Endicott, it's 15 miles up the road. If we go to UMass Boston, that's like 6 miles down the road. We're home by 7:30, where some other schools that are in more spread out geographic areas, you might play a game on a Wednesday and you get home at midnight. Well, it's really hard to do a 3-hour problem set after you did that. But if you get home at 7, you eat, you know, you're in front of the computer at 8 o'clock, there's a sense of normalcy there.
Right, that makes sense. What's the dugout atmosphere like with a bunch of analytical athletes?
It took me a little bit to adjust. I'm a state school guy, and you know, it's different. Our kids want to know why. Number one, everything we do, but they're also problem solvers. So if you're one of the old school guys and you're doing signs like this, we're going to have it in the second inning because our guys understand how those systems work. With the analytics of the game, we don't have to sell the numbers to them because they know them. So you know, when we talk about shifting and things like that, a lot of our mandates that we try to do defensively have come from alums. So you know, we can reach out to an alum and say, you know, what's the pull rate across all levels of professional baseball? I can get that question answered by 3 different alums in professional baseball, and they all come back with, you know, 8 to 10 degrees across all levels. And so our guys buy that real easy because it's coming from one of them. But by and large, our kids are baseball players that just happen to be really good students. And that's what we wanted to change. That's what Coach Barlow brought, our head coach, when he got to MIT. That's what I try to do as a recruiter, is we want baseball players that happen to be great students. And I think in the past, when they struggled in the 80s and 90s, it was more MIT kids that happened to play baseball. And I think that's the shift that allowed us to be successful. And
you guys have had quite a bit of success putting guys out and getting them to the next level. Who recently have you had that has gone on to play professionally and made it?
The recent ones are in 2017, David Hesselink went in the 34th round to the Seattle Mariners. He's still working for the Mariners. And Austin Flair went in the 8th round to the Cubs. The summer before, Austin was a temp in the Cape League, and he homered in his first at bat. They kept him down there, and he finished second in the Cape League in home runs and RBIs that summer. So that was certainly a feather in our cap as a program. It makes it a lot easier to get the next guy down there. It was a special time for our program, seeing what Austin did, especially in a league that's so prestigious and so local that we all have ties to. I coached a summer in the Cape League, and Coach Barlow was down there for 6 years. Coach Gallagher, our hitting coach, worked as an intern for the A's for a summer in the Cape League. So we all have ties, and it was great to see one of our own have success down there.
Are there projects going on campus? I know that the students there are very forward thinkers and working on a lot of things. Are there things that are going on campus that you're able to test on the baseball field?
Yeah, so there's a sports science division, and within our mechanical engineering group, and they do a great job. And we've kind of bridged the gap a little bit. Whenever there's a baseball program, we give them full access to our facility. There's a couple of projects going on right now. There's some proprietary information with major league organizations that we can't share in this format, but there's certainly an intersect there. And I think David Hesselink was probably the first one to really start to bridge the gap. And since then, we've had a number of current players working on that. We had Nate Rodman graduate in 2016, and he and his roommate put together a weightlifting program that a bunch of SEC schools are adapting now, where basically It tracks all your reps. It does everything for you, and they're having a ton of success with that. That was something they built in the classroom. They were able to use during their conditioning sessions, and our strength and conditioning staff did a great job of working with them and giving them access to that. And I know a lot of the other teams on our campus have similar experiences.
That sounds like a lot of fun to be out there for sure. Shifting to baseball side of things, analytically, what are some of the important numbers that you look at with your pitchers?
I mean, strikeout to walk rate is always going to be important. I mean, my biggest thing with our pitchers is we're never going to be at a depth point where we're like a major league organization. So it's not just an eternal chase for velocity. We want velocity. We want our kids to get bigger, stronger, faster. We need to keep them healthy first. So that's, my first rule as a pitching coach is do no harm. Then, we start to look into fastball usage from the major league level, how that's tracking down, how the ability, we'd love to be 50% fastball usage like most major league teams are now. But the fact of the matter is the average Division III freshman can't throw his breaking ball for strikes enough yet. So we have to balance that off. And it's always a little bit of a yin and yang of, all right, I like this idea. I think whoever came up with it is right. How do we apply it at our level? All right. And which ones of our guys are going to use to have success? So it's kind of a 4-stage process whenever some of the new analytical trends come up. And, that was with the pull rate, when we watch it, you see everybody's on the shift into pull on the ground defensively, right? In the big leagues, it's drastic. And we would debate internally, how much does that apply to Division III baseball, right? Because the bunt is more in play and they're not big league hitters. So that with less bat speed, are they going to pull less? So that's why we wanted to look at how much is that happening across like low A baseball. And you started to see some comparisons there.
That is interesting. I'm going to have to watch this interview a couple times to process all of this. Now, what about recruiting and looking at a high school kid? Because obviously there's not as much analytical data there or metrics stuff there. So we're evaluating somebody on the recruiting trail. What are some of the things that you look for there?
There's certainly applicable metrics. If a kid's running a sub 760, he tends to be athletic, right? If he's throwing 85 plus, there's some arm strength there. All right. If you're seeing some exit speeds, so there's certainly some measurable metrics. But we spend a lot of time on the road. I like to see them with my eyes, and you like to have player comps. And I've always said you try to pick out the midpoint of your roster, and you want to recruit at or above that level, and that's how you keep progressing. So if everybody that you bring in is at or above the midpoint of your roster, you're going to get to improve. There's some challenges. We only get to see our guys once usually, and a lot of it's in a showcase environment. So video becomes important, and some of the stuff that goes on Twitter is really important because that's the initial contact point a lot of times with us.
Right, and I want to talk about that, but you mentioned the eye test, and I talked to Coach Walter at Wake Forest about this. If you had to pick one or the other, okay, what are you going with? You going with the eye test or what the metrics tell you?
I'm going with the eye test and letting the metrics be tiebreakers though. So, I don't want to ignore one or the other. I don't have to pick one or the other. So if I have two players that I think are comparable and one of them's running a 6.6 and the other one's running a 7.1, I'm going to take the kid running the 6.6 because there's just going to be more flexibility there. If he's not our shortstop, he might be our left fielder because he can run. All right, that kid if he's 89 across the diamond, maybe I can put him on the mound. So I don't have to choose one or the other, but I would say the eye test it's just how those of us of a certain age grew up. That's how we find players. But I think as we evolve as coaches, we want to take the metrics in. I don't want to miss information. So if we can blend both of those together, I think we have a chance to be successful.
Going back to the Twitter stuff. I know that a lot of it is done that, like you said, that initial contact or that initial recognition of a player is done on Twitter these days. How are you using it? What platforms do you look at?
We certainly look at Flatground. I have a lot of follows. I love following pitching guys on Twitter. Obviously the Pitching Ninja kind of sparked a little bit of a revolution there. But I like going down to Pitchapalooza and hanging around with some of those minds. And there's just some great follows there. Fred Coral is one that pops into mind. Connor McGinnis with the Dodgers is a friend and a really, really forward thinker. And Pete Mackey with the Twins, and some of those guys that were around college baseball and now have transitioned. And they think differently. And I like hearing from people that think differently. So those are my follows. As far as the platforms, right now I'm quarantined. I can't do anything. So
Right.
I'm sitting on my computer all day watching videos. We watch every video that comes into our program. So if a kid sends us an email, we're gonna watch it. So there's everything that goes through my feed. I'm basically looking academics first. Is the kid going to be close? Because I don't really want to watch a 23 ACT and get excited about him and then know that I can't get him.
Right.
So I'm scrolling through just trying to find basically the people that are presenting kids without going over the top. I don't need to be sold. I want to see it presented in a professional way. Try not to be a jerk about, oh, so-and-so didn't call me back, some of the nonsense that goes on. We're lucky on the pitching side. We tend to be nicer to each other than the hitting side does. They get nasty with each other a little bit on the other side.
Why is that?
I have no idea. The hitting people are really mad at each other. And the pitching people have more of a sharing amongst each other. And I think a lot of that comes from as pitching coaches. I think we all should get hazard pay a little bit, because we all end up being the head coach's whipping boy at some point. You get yelled at, what pitch was that? And all that. So I think there's a esprit de corps amongst the pitching coaches, where the hitting coaches, they're nasty with each other. You got big leaguers yelling at instructors. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and fortunately we don't have that on the pitch side.
I love it. What is it on? I've been asking quite a few guys this. Pitching Ninja is Rob Friedman. I work with him, and we're putting this quarantine coaches out. As a non-pitching guy, I don't learn anything on Pitching Ninja. I just am entertained by it. How is it something that you or your guys are learning from?
Well, I think it's all just part of that Rolodex of information that you try to build. So, we're learning a few things. We're learning, all right, this is how Pedro's changeup behaves. All right, we love watching that, right? You're right. There's an entertainment aspect to it too. But if we can, for our guys that maybe are 83, 84, when we're watching Kyle Hendricks and we're saying, all right, well, we want some things to behave like him. We want to imitate guys that are really, really good at this game. So I think that's been a way that it's certainly been great, and it's vastly entertaining. And
Yeah.
Another thing that Twitter has done is Twitter connected us to Driveline, and those guys do a great job. And we were able to get one of our guys to go out and work at Driveline over the winter, where he did his internship for them in the morning, doing software design for them. So he was a resource for them, and then he's working out with Trevor Bauer in the afternoon. So that's a pretty good way to spend your winter vacation as a college pitcher.
I would say so.
And we think that our guys bringing up to the table from a knowledge standpoint, from what they know software wise, that it's not just they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart. That kid tops out at 94, and he's one of the best computer designers on campus. So that, he brings something to the table when he goes there too, and it's a great relationship that we hope will continue to go forward.
Do you feel like with the type of student athletes you guys are able to bring in, that you're able to do more or move faster from a developmental side of things? Or is it still just baseball? Let's keep it fairly simple.
It's still baseball. So that's what we're always trying to balance is they can process a lot, but we don't want them processing too many things at the same time. So you don't want too many hamsters spinning in wheels. So right. we try to teach still in a step-by-step. And I always, it sounds simplistic, but you teach great students slow, and you teach struggling students kind of faster, so they got more to catch up on. So I think you have to be a little bit more creative with kids that struggle academically, and I've taught for a long time too, and where with top end students, they're going to process what you give them. So if you give them 6 things, that's going to be, they're all going, all right, and we just want them to go as athletes. So right. We try to narrow it down to the 1 or 2 checkpoints of their delivery that they, when they're struggling, they know they can step off, take a deep breath, and say, all right, I need to be good with my front side here, and I'm all right, or I need to be more aggressive here, and I'm going to be fine.
The kid that is watching this wants to be a part of the MIT program. What's the best way for them to get on the radar with you?
Just shoot an email, promote, be careful with your social media, use it to promote yourself. Understand that you're selling yourself, just like we are as coaches, and we're selling our program. Your social media, you should be selling yourself, because if we're going to start to dig, and we all have more time than we've ever had. So we're going to dig a little bit, make sure that there's not a lot of nonsense, try to stay out of the political bickering that's going on in the country. Try to just have it be about showcasing your strengths, not pointing to any potential flaws. And then the initial contact, send a transcript, your SAT scores so far. I think a lot of people that have tested early are going to have an advantage during this. So if you have tested early, let's get out there, because who knows when the next SAT testing date is going to be, because I don't know that you can take SATs 6 feet apart from each other. Maybe you can. I mean, that's kind of creative. I might have just come up with something there. You just move all the desks 8 feet away, everybody can take the SAT, right? But have that contact, some video. From a pitching standpoint, I like just a couple different angles. From the side, from behind. If I can see those two things, I'm usually pretty good. We do tend to practice film that's up close tends to be better than game film. Kids that maybe aren't as educated in the process, they'll send a bunch of like live at bats where dad's sitting in the 23rd row, and that's really hard to decipher.
Yeah.
You can have a couple of those clips in. If you want yard in a nice field, all right, yeah, cool, we like to see that. All right, and you want to show that off, but we can't really break down your mechanics from that far away. So there's a reason why when we go to the game, we sit behind the backstop.
How long does a video need to be before you figure out whether or not it works for you? Because I see videos that are 3 minutes long, and I've learned to try to keep them under a minute. You can pretty much figure it out with 9 or 10 pitches, right?
Yeah, I would say, no longer than 2 minutes. We don't have the attention spans for it, and nobody's going to sit there and watch 15 minutes of video on a kid. When you get down to the later stages of it, pardon me, maybe where you're deciding between one guy or another, maybe you might need that much, and we'll come back at you for that if it's somebody that we haven't seen. But very rarely are we going to recruit somebody that we haven't seen. That's just going to be that initial point of contact. Then we can start exchanging places we're going to be this summer, and see if we can be on a field at the same time.
Coach Carroll from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I have found this extremely fascinating, and I think a lot of people will. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this with me.
Hey, thanks for having me, and it's always great to talk about our program and our kids. We have great kids in our program. They're easy to brag about.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon then. Don't be careful what you ask for.
All right, take care, Josh. Thank you.
Take care.